from Heritage's headquarters in Delaware, Ohio, Grief Parkway. Couldn't be more fitting for the horrible year we've had, ending with grief. Just saying. Come on, throw that in there, please.
I don't know that that's a great idea.
Come on, just do it. 2020.
Actually, to quote me all season, that's actually dumber than hell.
Yes. Okay, let's go.
Hi guys, welcome to the final episode of BinBusters. Today we're going to discuss the corn winter, kind of go through our corn programs a little bit and see if there's any differences between my management, Jonah's management, and what set the winter apart from the other. You know, as we kind of did on the soybean thing, some of the things we talked about, you know, with your victory, your towering victory over mine on the soybeans and maybe why that happened. Maybe we'll try to do the same stuff on the corn today.
Sounds good to me.
Jonah, walk me through a little bit about your corn, your program. I know last episode we were all there, did the yield check. The corn looked very well. I think I was happy for you. You were probably happy with the results given the year we had.
Yep. So I know you and I both had similar management practices. I mean, there's a little bit of difference, not a whole lot though. You know, basically we both had some great decal hybrids that we chose. Yours is a little shorter season than mine. But like I said, we had almost the same management practice. I mean, we can kind of start with, you know, we start with a dry fertility program based upon what the soil test required and then what we knew we'd be removing throughout the year. I mean, you can fill in on that one. Your soil type's a slightly different one than what I had. Your P and K levelers are a little lower than what I had. So, I mean, I kind of had you as an advantage there. But, I mean, I think you did a great job of proving that even though you had lower P and K levels, that if you feed the crop, manage the crop, that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to, you know, the management piece. Like you said, a lot of guys, you know, will read a soil test and just say, we can't hardly work with something like this. And that's not exactly true. Mm-hmm. You know, you have different ways of getting nutrients into crops, whether it be, you know, dry applied or foliar to get it into that plant to get a response. And I think, you know, this year, you know, I was a little nervous. I knew where your entry was going to be planted, and I'm kind of familiar with that farm and the dirt there, and I know it's really good. And I was also nervous that, you know, with the weather we had and the replant and the late planting and, mm-hmm. you know, the 105-day hybrid, I didn't know where I was going to stack up against some of the fuller season stuff. But, you know, all in all, I was pleased with my results. And I think to talk a little bit about, you know, back to, you started to talk a little bit about fertilizer, you know, dry fertilizer, you know, NP and K. There wasn't a lot of differences, I don't think, between yours and mine.
I was going to say, we almost had a similar amount. The only thing I had, like I said, I had a little bit higher soil test levels than what you had.
My dry applied phosphates were probably higher than yours.
Yeah.
Probably even a little bit higher on the K values too.
But I don't think there's a huge difference. We kind of go down the list, you know, we're looking at, you know, the dry application was almost identical. Yeah. We both had in-furrow on our corn planters. We both ran in-furrow. You did a little bit different because you've talked about it all season long. You had the starter, you know, the
furrow jets. Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like, you know, especially for the ground that I was operating in, you know, to talk a little bit about that phosphorus relay, going from that in-furrow, you know, to getting that other band of phosphorus each side of that root mass. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, that's one thing that stands out different between my program and yours. And I think as we walked the fields earlier this year, you were a little disappointed early season through the growing season. You thought it kind of had a dull look to it, where mine, you know, didn't seem like it got stagnant at all.
Yeah.
You know, and I think maybe it was that relay and passing that torch, you know, over to the next growing stage to keep that next root development.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go, you know, basically from seminal roots to nodal roots and that plant starts to develop, you know, that plant had adequate amount of phosphorus the whole time.
Exactly. And, you know, like I said, I had a little higher phosphorus levels, but, you know, being available at the right time with the growing conditions and lack of moisture we had this year, you know, to get those nutrients in the plant.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that kind of stands out is a little bit different is just the planter setups mm-hmm. between yours and mine.
Exactly. I mean, you know, we go down through and we're still looking. Next step would be like the pre-herbicide. I mean, I know we ran similar programs. Yeah. I elected to do more of a weed and feed just to get a little extra nitrogen on. Both of us had similar nitrogen levels, but I chose to use that avenue to get more nitrogen in that, you know, that stage. You obviously did a pre-herbicide with yours too, I assume.
Yeah, and the pre-herbicide kind of ties into, one of the check marks up here with the early post and the early fungicide, timing those two together. With the amount of rainfall and stuff that we had there and some of that stress, some of my residual chemistry was dissipated. And I was forced in there earlier to make a glyphosate pass to kind of clean up some grass.
Yeah.
Where I'd use some micros and things of that nature. But really for me to apply the fungicide product that I wanted to apply, that time frame was not there.
Yep.
So, and as we wanted to raise big corn through this whole thing, you and I talked about the ROI piece, and I didn't know if it justified me making another pass, 10 to 14 days later with that other fungicide just to, maybe gain a few extra bushels for the NCGA contest or, so I was into my corn a little bit earlier. So this particular farm that the entry that I submitted did not get the 2-pass fungicide program. Now, a lot of our other acres did, and I know yours did, but this particular one did not.
Exactly. So we both had, an early post herbicide. I know we both ran a lot of different products with that, not just glyphosate. We did some more residual with that. At least we did. Try to keep those weeds at bay, try to keep them held down. I mean, keeping those fields clean all season long is a huge thing on high yielding corn.
Yeah.
And you don't want weeds there at all.
And even to that, when you and I and Amanda went and walked that field there pre-harvest, we did see a few cockleburr coming in. That farm is notorious for cockleburr.
Mm-hmm.
And, even with a couple shots through the season, we still had some late season. It's not bad. It's being probably petty if we're complaining about it, but, just to see one here and there. So.
But you and I do obviously want to manage our fields accordingly, do the best we can.
And I guess the takeaway from that is, when we made that application, residual like Caprino had a fit, because if we'd have just used glyphosate, imagine how bad the cockleburr would have been going into harvest. So. I
agree with you 100% on that. I mean, and along with that herbicide pass, one thing I do want to give a shout out for is we always use Maxin ZMB on every pass if there's leaf surface available. We don't just do it on our high yielding stuff. We do it on everything we spray. If there's any kind of crop out there, we're putting Maxin ZMB because we're such a believer in it and what it does for our crops and the huge return on investment we have with that. So, I do have to brag a little bit about that product.
And to that, I like ZMB. For me, for some particular reason on that farm, our manganese levels were great. Mm-hmm. Tissue test values on manganese looked solid through the season. So we elected to just use a Maxin zinc and a Maxin boron to kind of address ours. More, the ZMB would have been fine, but I was just looking for a little higher loads and maybe the zinc and the boron piece.
More of the rifle approach, as we're told, and less of the shotgun approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Target right on what you need there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously after the early post herbicide, we went into a side dress application. We use dry for side dress just because of our geography, how it works great for us. So dry urea, dry AMS. I think you're using something very similar or even the same.
Yeah, and I actually put a little bit of potash with our application as well. Just, we were seeing potassium stress based off the field forecasting tool. Mm-hmm. So we made that decision to lay a little bit extra K in there. Not high volumes, just a little to get, ahead of a rain. That process is only going to work if we can get some rain.
So I didn't do it on our NCGA entry, the potash, in the side dress, but we actually did on a few other acres, just because same thing, field forecasting tool was calling for it. And we saw huge responses. And these are some very marginal acres, and we were extremely excited for it. Just another great tool that we have with the field forecasting tool and how it couldn't have been more correct for us.
Absolutely.
And how it helps benefit our farm. Like I said, that's even without talking about the NCGA entry. So we go past side dress. We're back to early fungicide. That's one thing I did do where you didn't, just because of what you talked about. Didn't quite fit into the rotation. For us, it did work a little bit better, fit where we needed to fit. Just keeping that plant, healthy and moving along. At that pass, we also used a stress mitigation product with that. We didn't use just fungicide. So we had some more additional micros. So we had a little bit of expense there with that pass, but we felt like it was going to be something that was going to benefit us. And I really do think that made a huge difference on our corn because, right before it was going to pollinate, I mean, we had that extreme heat. I mean, that plant was stressed, had every bit of stress it could have. And we didn't really see that stress in those plants just because, of what we did to manage it accordingly.
Yeah. And part of that too, the stress difference between yours and mine, right before that time frame, if you remember, I caught between 4/10 and a half inch.
Yeah.
Going into that. And that kind of helped me. Where I think, that I didn't have the early fungicide, I feel like I would have give up a little bit there. But fortunately, I got that rain and kind of helped through that. But,
and where our field is, it's actually a couple miles from your house where we had our entry.
yeah, absolutely.
And the weather there better than I ever do. And I think you said roughly close to 6 weeks without rain, or such a small amount that we couldn't even measure it.
It was extremely dry. We had the corn there in our home farm was struggling with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that just shows you, how we can manage through those even, I guess the next pass we need to talk about is late season in. This is something you and I spent, I know, a solid 7 days discussing. Every morning we called each other, talked to each other. Are we doing it? Aren't we doing it? Why do we need to do it? Why don't we need to do it? What's field forecasting tools say? We talked to our Winfield agronomists about that. I mean, we talked to, I don't know how many times you and I are on the phone that week talking about this, trying to make our minds up.
Yeah, we went back and forth a lot of times and trying to balance, like you said, the different products. It was basically, for me, it was 28 and KTS. I was still wanting to throw a little bit more K into that plant, but I didn't feel the timing was right. I didn't feel what we were seeing on FFT. There was going to be a huge return on investment for us.
I think return on investment, it wouldn't have been there like we talked about.
Absolutely.
But I think, could we have gained a few more bushels? Absolutely. I think we could have.
Yeah.
But at what point do we, are we just throwing money away? I mean, the whole process of this entire year is we want to do this, but we also want to prove that we can be profitable with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point, with FFT and relying on it to kind of gauge that in-season management decision of, do we need to do it or do we not?
Yeah.
Trying to get an idea if that return for that nitrogen application's there, that return for that KTS application's there. I think that was a great tool for me. In the past, I probably would have just done that application. But knowing that I wasn't seeing that huge ROI through FFT, I decided to pull the plug on it.
Exactly. And I think, looking back at it, I kind of wish I would have done it. Just could have seen how far I could have pushed it.
Yeah.
But, the ROI would not have been there. And we both know that. I mean,
absolutely.
And one other thing we talked about too, that ear leaf was exposed at the time we were going to do that late season application. It's such a big risk of burning that ear leaf. And if we damage that ear leaf, kind of like we've talked about all season long, we had a grower meeting this summer, plot day. We showed what happens if you damage that ear leaf, So that's some things you and I were thinking about and the risk we were taking with that. So
absolutely. And, moving from that to our next management decision that we had to have, just the fungicide pass, the aerial fungicide pass. For me, that's a win-win.
Yep.
You and I both made the decision to do a very comparable programs, fungicide of choice and micros of choice. Everything was pretty well paired up there. I don't think you did anything different with yours than I did with
same
mine.
Thing.
But I think, now kind of walking through it, it's trying to discuss why one over the other. I don't know if you look at all these factors that it stands out. I don't know. Could we give starter the nod? Could we give the early fungicide the nod? It's
very similar programs, very similar yields, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very happy with what I got. I know you are too.
Yeah.
We had positive ROIs. I know you did. I know I did, I'm sure. I know I did, you did, I'm sure. So
the question I got, most of the growing season, hey, on that corn, do you think you're actually going to make any money? And I said, well, yeah, I feel it like we're going to. And, now that we've got the numbers in and going through all the costs and the analysis and the breakdown, just trying to put the numbers to it, I'm exactly 100% positive we made money.
Yep.
So disclose, your yield information and my yield information. I'm at 289.9 and you're at
283.9.
So trying to pin 6 bushel into this whole chart, I think, is kind of tough right now.
And I mean, like I said to start with too, you had, I think you were dealt a little bit tougher deck to deal with what the acres that you chose. I mean, you didn't have quite I felt like I had the garden spot to plant mine on. You didn't quite have the same thing. I think 4 or 5 years ago, you had trees growing in your field or very close to it. And look what you can still do by managing it.
The other thing, man, it was just late planted, 105-day hybrid. Man, it just felt like I was taking a knife to a gunfight there for a while. But
you want it. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, that was the main thing. We won. And I think, here this winter, you and I will dive in and see who actually wins on the ROI game too, because I think that's what's more important.
Exactly.
Now that the NCGA numbers have came out, I would like to congratulate your operation on that second place finish in the no-till non-irrigated. With me, I had to jump to a class. I was in the minimum till class because of a little bit of vertical tillage I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that put me in a 4th place finish with my yield. So.
But it's still a great number to have too. I mean, you can't complain at all. And like you said, the ROI, that's what it's all down to now at this point. We know who won the yield. Obviously, you won that in the corn. That's great. Congratulations. So, it's going to be great to see this winter when we dive into these numbers, who actually won on the ROI. Because to me, that's, it's probably a little more important for that, because at the end of the day, we both like making money and having fancy equipment. So hopefully the fancy equipment can come one day.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out on the bean one is just, the ROI on that one's going to be kind of cool, because at first I felt like I was throwing everything at it that I needed to try to play catch up based off of 50-some days of lost planting. So I hope my ROI looks as good on those as what yours does.
But I also spent a pile of money on my beans because I didn't want to take second place. And, I felt like I had I had everything going in my favor with those beans early season because of the planting. So, we just kept on doing everything we could to them just to really drive home. But we also spent a pile of money on them trying to get there.
I was hoping for a little bit. You might be just a touch nervous.
Yeah. I was.
I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for staying tuned in this season. We really appreciate everybody's comments and feedbacks. We're looking forward to 2021 and what it brings and what it's going to look like for the BinBuster program. And I know I'm excited and Jonah's excited.
Exactly. I'm very happy. This worked out great this year. Couldn't be happier with all the support we had from the Winfield team, the Heritage team, and I guess we probably should throw our name out. Couldn't get by without Amanda this year. So,
Amanda's done a lot with us and Courtney's done a lot with us. It's just been a huge team effort, and we'd like to thank everybody for that. So with that being said, thank you. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You got it rolling?
Is lunch going to be here anytime soon? I'm just curious. Beep, beep, beep.
I've had so many symptoms, I don't know whether it's Rona or Crown Royal. I don't.